We're back for another week of In the End Zone with Coach Noel Mazzone, and we've had an interesting season with Coach. He's come to us from beer gardens. He's come to us from different places in Germany. Today, he's in his car, and he just got his espresso. So, Coach, it's good to have you back and enjoy that.
Yeah, well, the typical, drive through Starbucks. I'm into the oat milk shaken espresso game right now, which my kids tell me at my age I should really be cutting down on the espresso. I tried to tell them at my age you need to add espresso so I can stay awake through the day.
Yeah. I'm listening to you order that drink, and it was very wordy. It was like a long West Coast offense play with all the things you had to get put in there. And that's we're going to talk about terminology today. It kind of goes right with our theme.
Starbucks needs to go to one-word tempo.
They do.
Drinks.
That's exactly it.
Yes.
You should be able to go up there and say one word and get it. Or flash
Yes.
them a picture, even better, right?
Yes.
They don't even have to open the window.
Have some boards in your car, like they do on the Southwest flight now, where they just flash you. Do you want water, a Coke, a Sprite?
Yeah.
And you just go 1, 2, 3, or 4.
See, that's exactly
that's tempo. That's tempo service right there.
Well, that's the theme today. How do you do all this? How do you structure an offense? And then add in things like being able to run it at a very fast pace. And this is something that's always been of interest to me. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Noel, but I was an English teacher for 10 years. So really the study of language is something I've always been interested in. When I was a young coach, I used to get my hands on any old playbook I could find anywhere and just study the terminology structure to understand how people looked at how were they going to communicate things. And it's you could go all kinds of directions with this one, just like you could run any type of offense. There's a lot of different ways that people handle this.
It is. It's a great discussion because there's so many different points of view on the discussion, right? I'm like you. I can remember. In fact, I happened to look at it the other day. I've got an old Oakland Raiders playbook that was probably at least. This was just the offensive playbook, not special teams defense. The playbook was a good, I'm going to say 3.5 inches thick. And everything was calling plays. I can remember first getting into it in the triple digit and all that, where you had to tell everybody everything. I write zip, act 55, 628, backs cross, Ricky, Cobra. That's just one of your short calls.
Right.
And so that, to me, we had this discussion the other day. So to me, the whole thing is, how do I get, and now, it was easy when you were just like 2x2 spread or 2x1 spread, and you only ran like 25 plays. That's simple. But now you're starting to add some more volume. So I'm talking to these guys about, now they're under center, they're running the speed sweep, they're tying in power, now they're in pistol in the gun, they're in offset in the gun. So there's all this verbiage that needs to get communicated, and not being in a huddle. So how do you build the system and also the signals?
Right.
So whenever I watch tennis, I was watching Heupel at Tennessee, or watching Ole Miss, or watching these teams that really do a great job of playing fast, I keep hitting the record button and going back and trying to see, all right, how are they signaling this in? How are they getting this communicated? And how are they doing this so fast? So it's it's really an interesting topic, and it's a great discussion.
For sure. Well, let's start with the basics here. And I think in any good offense, you're going to look at how you're going to structure your formations. And this was a study for me some years back, was taking over as offensive coordinator at the college level, and we wanted to stick with a lot of the things we were doing. We liked those things. I was a part of that staff the year before and was promoted. But at the same time, when I looked at our formation system, it was a lot of stuff that I couldn't, in my brain, figure out how it related. And for me, I always like to think of it in terms of, what is my player, what is my learner able to focus on to really understand this and get it and be able to process it quickly. So everything for me kind of had to fit that filter of, it was going to be through not my eyes as the coach, but through the player's eyes and who's the learner. So I found 60 some words that pretty much you had to memorize, all those different things that were part of our formation system, a lot of different names. And we were able to cut it down with how we looked at it to basically one set of our players having to know 12 words and the other set who had adjusted in those formations needed to know, starting from their right, even numbers starting 0, moving out to 8, and then on the left 1 moving out to 9. And that placed everybody, and added a few tags in there. And when we looked at it, we could get into any kind of formation we want. Now, the downside was usually we're communicating one or two things. So it might sound like, as an example, rip 6 bunch, right? So that's 3 things instead of a 1-word call, but each of those things is communicating exactly what we want. So again, I don't think there's a right or wrong to this. I know some people like to get very short with their terminology. Some people end up communicating everything. So, Coach, for you, what do you feel is the best way to start this process when you're looking at formations and what you're going to use as terminology?
I always thought this. It always should take us maybe a good 10, 15 minutes to come up with a scheme, a formation, a scheme, and a play, what we wanted everybody to do. And then it would take us a good 2 hours to figure out how to call it. I've always been, okay, so you got your families, all right? So you're trying to build families like likeness in your system, but I also think you have to build a system at the start. So as you grow during the season or during the years, you can grow in your system and stay in the families. And I'll give you an example. So like all 2x2 formations, they're words that start with D. All 3x1 formations are all words that start with P. You build those families, trips, trio, trade, cup, crump, taffy, whatever, tiger, whatever you want to do. All the 2x2 formations, duo, deuce, dice, doubles, dart, so that you had formation families. Now, if we wanted to go 2-back, so that was all single-back formations. If we wanted to go 2-back, then it became colors. And I'm not saying there's not a right or wrong, right, Keith?
No.
I mean, it's just ever, right? These are just different ways things been done. There's all colors, so green, blue, orange, black, brown. I'm like you. I'm always looking for ways. How can I shorten as many words as I can out of my call? So here came a thought the other day when we were talking about this, and that is having defaults. So do you have default formations, default plays? So in other words, instead of, as you put in your base concepts, can you put them in? And this is a Bobby Acosta thing, which I thought was really interesting. Can you put them in by defaulting to the formation? So if I said I was going to run power, and I knew the base way I wanted to run power was offset I strong with a flanker and an X, just regular I formation, offset strong. Maybe that's what it is, right? So when I put in power, it's always out of that formation. That's the default play of power. Maybe my code word there is Rangers. All you got to do is direct the strength for the quarterback. So the quarterback would come out, and he's always calling where he thinks the field is. So if you're on the left hash, he'd be coming out saying, hey, right. So he's telling everybody that's the strength. I'm declaring the strength to you guys. Right. That puts your Y, that puts your flanker, that puts all those to the right. So the call, instead of being I right near 26 power, X glance, Z whatever it is, okay, your default play is right, Rangers. So if you start to build all your base concepts that way, all right, there's my base scheme, there's my base RPO or route, or even if it's block, whatever it is, there's the base formation. Now, that doesn't mean I can't go slot right Rangers. It doesn't mean I can't add formations to it and add motions to it and all that, but those become calls. But it just all of a sudden starts to build in my tempo plays by how I install my schemes with my formations. I thought it was an interesting thing. I hadn't really thought through the whole package that way. But like if you called snag and it was Chevron, like I family stuff, right? So if it's snag game, it's gas stations. If it's 3-step drop, 6-man protections, it's cars. If it's quick games, it's S-words. It's things like that. I try to family all my concepts, but if you did that and then defaulted those concepts by formation with, okay, Chevron is a gas station, Chevron means 2x2, Chevron means dual, the strength of Chevrons to the field. So now all you'd have to do is instead of saying dual right, Liz, Chevron, X dagger, you could just say right, Chevron.
Yeah. I've never heard of that approach to it where you're giving it a default, but I like it as a starting point. And a couple of important things that you pointed out there. The first being that the thought process as you're putting things together needs to be looking ahead. It needs to be not just on what do we need for this season or this particular week whenever you might be doing this. I would suggest you have it all figured out before the season, but you're going to add tags, etc. But when you look at it, ask the what ifs. So when we were looking at our formation system, we covered it all. What if in the future we decided we wanted to be a 3-back offense? Not that we would, but how would this fit? How would we call things if we were going to do that? And so that fit into the structure, kind of thinking all those things through and being able to come up with that terminology structure that's going to handle it. You handled it in families with the first letter. Some people do it with colors. Some people do it with numbers. What we found most useful for us and the way that we could teach it, and I would say that's really the factor. How are you going to teach it? So my way's not right, your way's not right. What's right for you and how you can teach it, I think that's really the key factor. But the way we looked at it was when we looked at any formation, and we had all these names for every formation, right? But there were commonalities between where X, Y, and Z were lining up in a number of these. So our thought started with, why do I got to tell these guys 8 different things and they're still lining up in the exact same spot? They got to memorize 8 different things that gives them that. So we said, okay, we're just going to take those 3 guys, X, Y, and Z. We're going to call that a surface, and we just need a right and a left for it. So as an example, anything, and this was family as well, anything with an R and an L at the beginning meant that we had 2 wide receivers opposite of each other, so the X and the Z, and then a tight end involved in this too. So starting with Rip and Liz would be your typical like pro flank, right? Tight end on the line, flanker outside to this Rip to the right, and the X outside to the left. So now we just have to move those other 2 guys who are the backs. And so we could get into empty formations. We could get into different backfield sets. And the other thing you mentioned was having a default. Well, there was a default in this. So it would start with Rip. If I just said Rip, we were in an I formation. Our I formation was default. As soon as I added a place for these other guys, which was going to be numbered, then we went to the pistol. But we could move that guy around. So as an example, if I want that tight end flanker to the right, I got Rip, and now I want to create that trip side. Again, numbers to the right were even, numbers to the left were odd, and so it went from next to the quarterback being 0 up into the B gap where you get your sniffer. That spot was 2. Off of your tight end or tackle was 4, splitting the difference between the widest guy and the tightest guy on the line of scrimmage was 6, and then the widest was 8, with some rules that moved it along. So if I called an 8 and someone was occupying it, that guy had to move in. But if I called a 6 and there was a guy occupying it, had to split the difference. So in this case, if I said Rip 6, we're in a pistol with the tight end to the right. And then the whole thing worked like that with families. The 0 through 9 was all the same. So the 2 backs or those 2 players needed to learn that. The empty was if it went 2 digits or backfield adjustment. So if I wanted like both backs next to, or both, we would have personnel groups. So let's say they're backs next to the quarterback. I could say, depending on which side I wanted each guy, either Rip 10 or Rip 01, right? And that would move those guys. If I wanted them split out wide to be empty, I could say like Rip 67. And so within there, Rip, those X, Y's, and Z's not moving, that's all they really need to know are those names. And then those 2 guys that were going to adjust needed to know the numbers. So that was an example of what we did.
How does the tight end know he's in line or flat?
Okay, so that's where the second letter came into the play. So the I tells him in line, Rip, R-I, and Liz, I. O tells him he's off the ball, so Rob and Lou.
Okay, so, all right, so do this. Just think about this one, Keith, because we kind of did it this last year, and I think there's something there. So if you say your 3 receivers are X, Y, and Z, and you say Rip, so you know you always got a guy in the boundary and a guy to the field, right? Your 2 outside guys, and they just say left and right, and right tells the other receiver to go to the field.
Yep.
So there's your 3 receivers, and you make your F your number guy.
Mm-hmm.
and he's your tight end. So he's your adjuster.
Yeah.
He builds it.
Yeah.
So if I wanted him in, say, a nub, trips nub, I would be right. What number would that be?
He's on
strong outside the tight end.
He's on the right or the
tackle,
left?
Off the ball. On the right.
4.
Okay, so you just say, hey, right 4. If he was on the other side, it would be what's if he on the left?
5 is the number.
5. Yeah. And you got him where you can put him in the backfield at a far and a near.
Yep.
You can put him you can put him outside the X. That's your F, your adjuster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he builds the formation. So as soon as your receivers see the right or hear right, they can get lined up. They're done.
Yep.
The only guy that has to hear the number is your adjuster, the F.
Yeah.
And you don't have to tell him in line what, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we were, for us, again, what was our starting point? We were a lot of 11, 12, 21, right? We could use 10. We really could use any personnel set.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the starting point for us. But I see exactly how that works. Same way of doing it, different way of skinning the cat. And as you're putting it there, if I'm starting with my 3 receivers and that's, the right and the left, that's an easy way to do it, right? And it's going to speed things up. So I'm with you.
Right. Now you want to go boundaries, then you just go left. That's going to put your 2 receivers into the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
So I could go left, 4, left 4. So now I got the nub to the field, but my slot into the boundary. I don't know. I'd have to, you and I'd have to sit down and get on paper and talk about this more. But I think there's something there.
Definitely something there. And the point being of all of this is a methodology to how you do it. So no right or wrong. Probably what it could get to is what is more efficient. And sometimes that doesn't matter to a team. Sometimes it does. So, but to me, if I was looking at it and we were a huddle team, so terminology was still okay. I could be longer if I needed to because I'm communicating the huddle. I would still want to ask that what if we want to be up tempo? How can we speed this up? And I think what you did is provide an answer for that.
Yeah, so you're always looking how to cut words. So these are all things. It's not like we haven't perfected this yet, Keith, right?
No, we will.
But all thoughts, right? One word plays. How do you line up quickly in formations? What's the best way? How do you signal this to your guys? So the more I can do this, I think the more tempo one-word plays I can carry. I've automatically, as soon as first day of install, add my base plays that I'm going to call all year, all right? I put them as default formations. On day 1, I've built in tempo. One-word plays tempo, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the concept. If I yell chevron, that's a tempo one-word play, but everybody knows it's dual. It's right chevron, right? Yep. So, I don't know. These are just all things to think through right now about as I install it, can I install it in a less verbiage tempo style? Interesting.
There's a lot of tools there too when you look at it. For me, when we went to one-word tempo, because we would use those quite a bit, right? And you got some smartass on the other team who's jotting everything down as you're doing it. He's on to, they've said this word quite a few times, and it's always been 3x1 stick draw, right? Which was one of ours. 3x1 stick draw was a one-word play.
Yes.
And then we had our specialty one-word plays that would probably be game plan. So the way we handled both of those, if you looked at my sideline, we would read it like a book, left to right. So starting with the first guy was our procedure, our tempo. Our next guy was a personnel group. After that was formation, and then the wristband guy. And then after him, and really I hadn't figured this out, first year we ever used picture boards was, I'm not sure how I want to use these yet, but we're going to make them, and you're going to stand here all game, and somebody's going to try to figure out what the hell we're doing, but it means nothing. So the first year it actually meant nothing. But then we got it to the point where for our one words, we had our standard stuff, which was always on the picture board, the top, as I'm looking at it, top left picture. We had 4, right? Divided it in fourths. It was the top left picture. So they would see that picture, and that was essentially what would be like a one-word play, right? They were actually looking just at a picture to get it.
Sure.
So the way it started is in our tempo, the tempo that we signaled in would be picture. For us, it all started with letters. So a city or a state and P for picture, so it'd be something like Portland, right? And then to screw people up, on the back of that sign that said Portland, I would have like a different one, let's say from something from the opposite coast of Portland, and I can't think of one off the top of my head, whatever it was, but another P word there. So somebody who's trying to figure out, which I had multiple guys would tell me, I think I got it. And they thought there was something to the words, but it was actually just the first letter. So the first word was P, picture. Go look at the picture. So everybody would just skip through everybody else who was standing there doing dummy signals and everything. They'd look at that, and we go. Now, for our specialty ones, on the diagonal from that, the quadrant diagonal from that, so I'm looking at it, it's bottom right, was always a word. And those words then were whatever we game planned for that week, and usually carry anywhere from 3 to 6 of those, right? And we had 6 boards, 6 pictures we used essentially all year long. It gave everything they needed, formation in the play, and then our specialty ones, which were one word. What I liked about that was, again, they would see a W like Wyoming, right? The city, state, takes them right to that board again, and they look at the word this time, right? And then, so of course, there's 2 dummy pictures in there that didn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. I like that for the boards.
Yeah, and what I liked about that was it took away. No, there are some guys who are smart who play defense. Did you know this? Really smart guys.
There are not. That's just a nasty rumor going around.
So ultimately, you got that kid out there who's like, at the high school level, he's in the AP physics class, and he figures out pretty quick. Hey, every time they say Longhorns, it's going to be this certain play, right? So we got away from using the one words, and we just look at the board, the word on the board. So 2 different quadrants. Now those boards would contain 12 different plays that we were, up to 12. If I could always create more boards if we needed to, but we found what we needed in 12.
Oh, you jumped way ahead in this conversation, bro. We were talking about formations. Now we're on boards and pictures, and you got ahead of me on class. You skipped the class.
I know. We'll go backwards. We'll go back.
Yeah, we need to go back, and we need to next Monday have another short discussion, because I got to think about this whole numbers, because I was just thinking, all right, so my 3 receivers, all right, unless it's a specialty formation, right, 2 tights or something like that, I'm going to play with 3 receivers, right? So right, left. So now it's, hey, field or boundary, right? Mm-hmm. All I'm doing is telling the slot where to line up, the right. Y. Field or boundary. Now I kind of like your number thing tells the 2 backs how to fit that formation.
Right.
Right? So if I wanted trips into the boundary, then it goes left to right, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like that? Is that how it goes?
Yes, that's right.
So if I was on the left hash and I would go, hey, boundary 3. That would put me trips into the boundary, right?
It's to the left. I wasn't flipping them, but I mean you could.
No, but I would have to know that if I was on the right hash, it would be boundary 8. Or not 8, 9, or whatever.
Would put him
right?
in formation in the boundary, yeah. 8
would
would be the widest. You've got it. Yeah, you got the main idea.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to kind of look at your deal on that.
Well, we need to pick this up because we're to our time here. So next week, and we're going to get into more detail. In the meantime, I'm going to draw this up, and we'll see what we have for our listeners next week. But we're going to continue our discussion on terminology.
I'm probably going to hit you up here in a couple of days after I kind of think through this whole thing. And you and I we'll have a Zoom, and we'll kind of come up with a great plan on this, because let's just stay in formations, motions, all that right now. And then we need to have another talk about the boards and communication from the sideline. These are great talks. These are talks that we spend 6 hours a day sometimes in the office talking, looking at guys on film and trying to figure out what they're doing and all that. So this is good shit. This is good shit, as they say.
Well, we've got the up-tempo version. We did it in under 30 minutes, and we'll pick up again next week. So, Coach, I appreciate your time, and look forward to talking to you later this week.
You got it, brother. I'll hit you later, Keith. See ya.